Brian Wall joins us to talk about growing up with trauma, learning to be good at what was expected of him, and finding his way out of addiction. He checked himself into a psych ward, learned to recognize the triggers of life transitions, and the value of a healthy dose of sleep and gratitude. He also talks about the work they are doing at Transitions Treatment Center. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery. Ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Neider. I'm a husband, a father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps.
The Illuminate Recovery podcast is brought to you by Illuminate Billing Advocates. Make billing and collection simple with leader in substance abuse and mental health billing services. Verification and analysis of benefits, pre-authorizations, utilization management, accurate claim submission and management, denial and appeal management, and industry-leading reporting. Improve your practice's cash flow and your ability to help your clients with Illuminate Billing Advocates.
Brian Wall is joining Kurt and I today. Brian is expert at solving behavioral health and addiction dilemmas, bridging the gap between clinical practice and business operations. He is considered a master at strategic direction and business operations, and is passionate about the ongoing development of programs and services that improve treatment success and position organizations for long-term performance. Brian is a powerful advocate for compassionate care as well. Brian, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shelley and Kurt. Hope you're well.
Doing great.
Oh.
Super excited to visit with you. And, I think this all the time. And so sometimes I think I'm like a broken record, but it fascinates me that, I never dreamt of being in substance abuse when I was growing up, right? That was not one of my dreams. And I would imagine, as I see your head shaking there, that probably wasn't one of your dreams either, as you navigated life and were this little guy, and yeah, I want to be in substance abuse. That's my dream. Maybe give the listeners a little bit of background as to, how you ended up in this world and what your footprint's like.
Yeah, so I certainly didn't have a dream of being in the field either. It wasn't anything that crossed my mind. Early on, I actually began undergraduate looking to go into med school, wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon because early on in my life, I stepped on a nail, got pseudomonas and osteomyelitis, and gangrene started up my right leg, almost lost my leg, and went through a ton of surgeries to correct that whole situation. And that led me to a pretty incredible relationship with my orthopedic surgeon at the time, a Filipino guy who was amazing, and ended up being close to his family for a short period of time there afterwards, and just opened my eyes to so much that he was able to do, like saving a life, saving a leg. I mean, I just thought that was awesome, and I wanted to be a part of that. So that was kind of my drive early on in college. And even before that, I almost lost my brother early on. So you can see the pattern of trauma that led to where this is going, right? And so almost lost my older brother to a car accident when I was younger. Then the situation with my foot, almost lost my leg. And, that led to me kind of dealing with a lot of internal issues that I was limited in dealing with at such a young age. I didn't have all the tools that I have now. And so I did the best I could to get through, and really found that becoming a chameleon and becoming what others needed in any given moment was my best go. And that started forming me even early on as a counselor. And now I look back and realize that. But, I swam most of my life, was pretty close to Olympic trial cuts at one point, and got a scholarship, swam at Division I school in college. And when I got to school, I was learning really quick that I was good at being what other people needed in any given moment. And that led me to being in situations and around people that probably weren't the most weren't the healthiest for me at that time, and they were doing things that weren't supportive of a healthy lifestyle, i.e., substance use, right? So, here we go. And I found out really quick that I wasn't able to manage being everything, being all things to all people all the time. And instead of like breaking and accepting the fact that I couldn't meet that standard, I chose to use stimulants in order to keep that train running. And so that became my drug of choice, my drug of habit, I guess, early on. And from there led to a number of other drugs, because inevitably you go to your dealer and they're all out of coke. So, hey, well, I'm not going to take a weekend off. So what else you got? Right. And so that's what I did. And that ended up leading into a number of different avenues of use. And that carried over into my adult life, even after I finished school, because I actually lost my scholarship 3 years in due to my cocaine use, and ended up dropping out. And it the whole addiction flamed. I mean, it just was a fire. It was ignited even more so at that point, and took me to places and levels that I'd rather not have gone, but did. And it offered a lot of experiences that I use today. I was able to, my recovery story, I'm in recovery now, and that whole story began there, led to a place of really trying to manage my use in a way that wasn't noticeable to others and didn't affect my daily life. And we know that doesn't always, that never works, really, if you're honest. I think on some level it's gonna get to a place where it becomes unmanageable, and it did for me. And so in early 2000s, that led to me becoming suicidal. I checked myself into a psych hospital and was looking to get help. I was using about 1 gram a day or more, depending on the day of the week, really. The weather outside, the people I was around, you name it, what shirt I was wearing, it really didn't matter, right? And so that led, my time in the hospital introduced me to another healing process. And that was what was offered there by the counselors. And that, again, really ignited my interest. And I wanted to know more about that and what role I might could play in that, because, throughout my time in college and even in the hospital, I was always told, like, gosh, man, Brian, when I talk to you, I feel like I've known you forever and I connect with you and you get it. And, the rapport was always a big piece of connection with others, and something I did really well. So, once I left the hospital, ended up getting my first job in the field at that same hospital 3 years later. They put me through grad school, walked me through the licensing process. I was in their emergency department and really revamped a lot of the ways they do things as an admissions department. I think maybe they even still use today, which is pretty cool. And then from there, I had the opportunity to go to the Dominican Republic to serve in troubled teens in a residential facility. And when I was down there, my wife, my previous wife, who's now passed away as of 2013, but she was diagnosed with cancer while I was down there and was doing pretty well. I was off all medication and, wasn't really, I wasn't using, I was drinking, but not even heavily. And so really my life was in a place where it was more manageable than ever, post addiction, introduction of addiction. And we came back to the States to tend to, my wife's treatment, and she passed away after a 4-year battle, left me with my 4-year daughter, our 4-year-old daughter at the time, who was born down in the Dominican Republic. And, from there, I went right back into what I knew best to maintain control, and that was my addiction. And that became even more ignited than before. And now there's a child on board. We had lost our house. I'd lost my job because I had to take care of her, my daughter, living upstairs in a 10 by 10 room on a pull-out couch with my parents in my parents' home. And it was a mess, to say the least. And she passed away. We moved to Central America to try to piece it all back together, because that was one of the promises I'd made to my previous wife, that I would make that effort. We connected so well with the Latin American culture, and so wanted to give that a go, and it didn't work out. Came back again, transition, not something I've ever done super well. It's something I have to keep tabs on really close now in my life, because I know there's triggers lying there that I need to be conscious of. And so we came back to the States. I remarried. Shortly before that, we came back to the States, and I landed in Michigan, where my wife is from. My wife now, who we also have another daughter with. I also have another daughter with, but we landed in Michigan, and again, that transition ignited that addiction process all over again. I started drinking really heavily and was caught at work at one point with alcohol in my breath, almost lost my license, and got into working with a recovery program for licensed professionals. And that got me on the path where I am now with almost 4 years clean and, down in South Florida, and clinical director for Transformations Treatment Center, trying to do my best to pay forward what I've picked up along the way.
That's an incredible story. I'm listening to all of these traumas.
Yeah.
All along the way, almost lost your brother, which I'm sure was pretty traumatic. Stepped on a nail. I'm curious as I think about that. How did that come out? Like, you got your whole foot, everything's intact, or did you lose some of it?
No, all of it was intact. And that was another amazing piece of the story. I mean, this surgeon, they had to fly him in from the Philippines because I had gone into a couple surgeries, and the general surgeons, I don't know what they call these guys, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong. They didn't know what I had. It was starting to get worse. They didn't know how to stop it. I was retaining fluid. I mean, it was a mess. And I was like, what was I, like 11 at the time? So I'm in the hospital for like a month, out of school for a year, had 5 surgeries, but they were able to keep everything. I don't have a much feeling in my foot now. I think probably the anesthesia is still taking, maybe. I don't know what that's about, but I'll take it. I got my foot, and I'm grateful to be here with 2 legs. So no complaints on my end.
That's incredible. And that didn't slow you down. I mean, you still qualified for, swimming awards and scholarships and all of that kind of stuff. So it sure must not have slowed you down very much.
Yeah, looking back, I would agree with you. At the time, again, I think it was really amazing. I'm a believer, and I think it's amazing how God works and just piecing together things in your life to prepare you for the future. Amazing how he does that. I'm so glad he's in charge of that and not me, because he's way better at it, right? And I think early on in all the traumas that happened in my life, he pieced together how to be present in the moment and get from one day to the next. And I became really good at that. And even today, today at work's been really busy, but I know that today is today. Right now, I just need to be present where I'm at and offer people what I've got in the moment. And we'll worry about tomorrow when it gets here. I may not make it home tonight. I know that's a reality. And so right now I'm with you guys, and I'm just trying to be present and share the best I can with my heart, what I've learned, what I've picked up along the way, in hopes that it's a blessing, to somebody.
Well, and it's so much more of a blessing to you as well when you can be present, right? Because then you capture everything that's happening right here, because it's really the only place you can really be, right?
Yeah. And the opposite, with addiction is just, it's the opposite of that, right? And so it's just amazing. I was sitting in my bedroom last night, and I was lying there on the phone. I was doing some LinkedIn stuff, and I was baffled at the fact that my youngest daughter, was taking a bath. She's in the tub in our bathroom. And so I'm hearing the splashing of the water, her giggling, and her talking with her little dolls back and forth, and I was laying there and I was staring at my phone, appearing as though I was being productive, but I wasn't. I was reflecting on the fact that how cool is that I'm laying here right now, stressed out as I can be about this new transition with a company, and want to do a great job and just love on people the right way. And I'm able to be so present that I can hear water splashing in my tub, and I'm tracking the conversation between my daughter's dolls. Like, that's such a cool place to be, Like, what do you want in life, right? And before, it was like I was trying to find in my black book who to call so I could, and then what, right? And then what? Oh, yeah. Let's do another line. And then what, right? Well, and now it's like I know what that then what means. So cool.
It's so cool. And it's so interesting, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard parents go, man, I just need them to be quiet. I'm so sorry they're being noisy. And I'm like, why would you be sorry for that, right? These are these beautiful human beings. Let them live. Let them imagine and all of the things they do. And you can be present for those moments and be grateful for them, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And I admit I will be one of those parents very often. because I'm human first, and I got my limits. But my oldest daughter, she actually was born in the Dominican Republic, not breathing. She came out, she had black eyes, like literally no blood flow to her head. Like it was, and we had to put her in the tent and do the whole thing. And they did chest compressions on her. And thankfully it was down in the Dominican Republic, and my wife didn't understand Spanish. I did. So I'm communicating with the doctors, and she's in a tent behind her bed. They're giving chest compressions to her. More trauma for me, obviously. Scared out of my mind, trying to hold it together, and appears though everything's normal and okay. Obviously she made it. But to this day, when she came out, I remember her not, I remember her not crying. And that was a pretty scary time. And I was there trying to translate and just hold it together. And now, I'm grateful to hear her voice. It's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and then, that's trauma. And then you talk about losing your wife. And I know you kind of, sort of breezed over that, but oh my gosh,
caught that?
going through cancer with your loved one, like your spouse, I don't know if too much other than losing a child. That's right up in there with losing a child. That's brutal.
Yeah. It was beyond what I can put into words. I always tell folks it was like draining the ocean. It can't be done. And I again, just learned to get from day to day and to do what it took to just keep moving. I didn't even do it well, but I made it to the next day. And to me, in that time, that was a win. And if I got a run in or a workout or I ate breakfast, that was a win that day. And so I've learned to piece it together. And I think that holds a lot of value in where I'm at right now in life, professionally and even personally, just being a support to my family, but just passing on to folks how to do that, because sometimes that's all we got today. We just got to get to tomorrow. And I run an emergency room, essentially. This is what we do here. We have souls. They don't have open cuts and wounds, but these folks are hurting and they're bleeding out. And so they come to us, and this is the emergency room, and we do our best to patch it all back together and get them back on the street and back out to their families. And part of that process is helping them understand how to piece it together, how to put together 2 days, because when they come, putting together 2 minutes is a lot.
Yeah, big time. So I can totally relate to why you'd be checking out, right? Why you would want to go back to using, because even though it's not healthy, we all know, where that ends. But boy, it's a way to check out and get relief from that deep emotional pain.
It is. It's interesting though, because I used it for so long as a support and to manage, to check out, to manage all the stresses I had in my life. And now I literally think of smoking crack and doing blow, and even in drinking, to the levels that I was drinking. And I get this shiver, just like, whoa, how did I ever put that together and still make it to the next day? I can't tell you how I did some things in the pool that I did in training and while being jacked up or, tripping on acid or whatever it was. And, I look at it now and I can't imagine going back there. And that's not because I'm some really incredibly awesome dude. It's simply because that sounds really stressful to me. Like, I can't imagine managing that along with all that I'm trying to do with the people that are in the building that I'm sitting in right now. Like, how horrible would it be that I showed up to work and let these folks down? And there's no way possible I'd be able to do it and manage that chaos in my life as well. And my wife wouldn't have it. So she's an amazing woman, amazing support. And without her, I don't know how I'd piece together minutes in the day sometimes, honestly.
Oh, but what a blessing. What a blessing to have this incredible family around you. I'm curious, as you were going through the loss of your first wife and trying to care for your daughter, what's that family dynamic? What was that like then for your daughter? And how does a family system heal from something like that?
It was one of the most chaotic times of my life. One of the most organized, chaotic times of my life, really, because my mom and dad, God bless them, still with us. And they are amazing people, but they are like professional enablers. Thank God. Because in that moment, them allowing me to heal in my dysfunction, you know, and I feel like I was going to addiction to seek healing, to seek coping, to get through that grieving process, you know, although ineffective in every way, right? I was creating more problems for myself. But when we were with them in the house, they were really great at understanding where I was and all my brokenness, and Brian's leaving late tonight and we know what's going on and we just hope he makes it back. And thank God the kids, you know, his daughter's asleep upstairs and she's safe and the doors are locked and she's okay. And we'll cover the team while he's gone, but praying the whole time that I come through and I figure this out and I get over it. How does the family dynamic heal? It's a process. Time heals, really. And I think it all hands on deck, you know, and my daughter's been in counseling ever since the beginning. And so I think that's been a big piece of helping her process on her own individually some of the things that she doesn't quite get and understand. And with me, you know, remarrying to my current wife and having that full family system in place, I think that's been a big piece of the healing process. And then also both my wife and I being in recovery and just not having anything to do with the nonsense anymore, you know, having that stability and knowing that Dad gets up at this time, he goes to work, he comes home every night at this time, this is what we do when he you know, there's that structure, that routine, that predictability in place. And that helps a lot of that anxiety reduce to a point where you can address what needs to be addressed, because you're not distracted by additional chaos or additional nonsense that's happening in the family around you in the midst of the healing process. That's crazy. And I think that's a lot of times what happens in family systems. I'm really big on family systems. We talked a little bit before we hopped on tonight. And, you know, I think it's crazy how that is a big part of what needs to happen in the healing process, addressing the family system, because we treat individuals and we don't always do a really great job of including the family in the process. And then they land right back in the same pot they came out of, right? And so and naturally those old behaviors are going to resurface again, and they're going to have to cope with them on their own. And if the family system's not educated on how to do that, well, then surely we're going to have a readmit. That's just how the process works. Not because they're weak. It's because if you don't fill your car up with gas, you're going to end up on the side of the road. It's just, that's the way it works.
It is. And we've proven it over and over again, right? It's like you can't go put somebody back in a broken system and expect that they're going to be able to, you know, manage that. Exactly.
So I'm really big on, you know, with my staff here at Transformations, making sure that we're being intentional about including the family and educating them on addiction and the mental health diagnosis, whatever's on board, and you know, the importance of medication and whatever the treatment plan includes, but just including them in that whole process. And then also providing resources for them on, you know, what do we do? What is our role in all this? And what happens when we feel like we're broke and we can't make it through the day? Like, what does all that look like? You know, and just trying my best to advocate and provide resources so they get the support they deserve.
And so admirable too, because you know, the focus that you put on it is about the person, about helping them with that specialized plan that works for them, right? And
absolutely.
I've said this before, is that, you know, everybody has different values, and just because I have a specific lifestyle that I want to live doesn't mean that that's the lifestyle everyone needs to live. But sometimes if somebody chooses homelessness, like, that kind of bothers us, right? It's like, no, there's a better way. You shouldn't choose that. But being able to sit with whatever it is that they want to choose, you know, is an important piece for them to have that acceptance. I'm curious a little bit about, you talked about, you know, eventually becoming suicidal as things progressed and got worse. And if I heard you right, you said you checked yourself in.
Yeah.
What made the difference between, you know, especially with men, when men get really suicidal, they're pretty apt to take their lives. What was that pivotal moment for you that said, I need help?
Ego. I think that's what it was. I was just too worried about looking whatever way, honestly. So it was ego. That's all it was. I don't think it was anything above and beyond. It was simply me being so selfish and all about myself that, like, oh, I can't, I can't, I can't bail out. I can't go that direction. I was born and raised in a Christian family too. So that was hindering my thought process too. Like, well, man, what does that mean? Do I go to heaven? Do I not? I was young and still hadn't had that question answered for myself. And so, but then on top of that, there was nothing in it like, oh, I don't want to leave my mom and dad without. I honestly wasn't that deep. I was way more selfish than that. And it was like, man, what is this going to look like on my name if I do X, Y, Z? And so I actually went and hung out with my one of my drug dealers that night and just kind of blew it out and contacted my psychiatrist early in the morning. And he was a doc for the hospital that I went to and ended up working with long term for like 7 years, I think. Crazy story. Anyhow, I called him and he talked me into, hey, let's just see where this goes. He's like, he was one of those guys that was like, hey, let's give it a shot. Worst case scenario, you can always get discharged and go buy another bag. And that's a crazy way to talk in a way, but it spoke to me. I got that. I was like, oh, that gives me that leaves the power in my hands. And I like that and he knew that about me. He had treated me for a number of years. He knew I was a power guy, control guy, that stimulants, right? I mean, all this lines up. So he was like, hey, Brian, you can always use again. You can always go backwards.
Which gave you, that out so that you could choose the forward path.
Absolutely.
And it seems like, I listen to a lot of stories and there seems to be these pivotal moments in these stories that just shift it, right? That get you like the doctor for your foot, right? That just kind of shift your life and your experience and the direction that you're going. And it sounds like that this psychiatrist was also one of those pivotal moments.
Yeah. Oh, totally. This guy was my buddy. In all the most professional ways, I guess. There was those boundaries in that relationship, but I saw him as more than he probably saw me. I was just a client, but man, I really looked up to the guy. He made good sense to me. He met me where I was at. He got me. He spoke my language. Early on, I needed that, and he met me in that place to help me tease apart a lot of the confusion that I had going on. And so I had a lot of respect for him. Still have a lot of respect for him, and and I think he was just, like you said, another piece of that puzzle that I really look back and I see God just kind of using these situations. I believe that he allows things to happen in our lives for a reason. And I think it has a bigger vision. And I think he's using them, allowing them to happen so that he can use them to meet his need, his to fulfill his glory, I guess you could say, down the road, to prepare us for where we're going. And so I look back and I see how all these things now fit together pretty well. Like he was preparing me in a way to be in the role that I am in now, to guide a lot of hurting folks. There's very few people. There's a lot of stuff I deal with on a daily basis with individuals and stuff that they're struggling with, but there's very few I can't connect with. There's very few stories I hear that are outlandish to me. There's very few stories that I hear or experiences that I hear about that are outside what I can connect with it, because I feel like there's so much stuff that's happened in my life that there's very, very little I haven't experienced. And that's not, I'm some big, great, whatever. I just think God was wise enough to allow me to go through those things, to use them now. And that's all I'm trying to do.
It's I'm listening to you talk about God and how God is using you as an instrument, to serve other people, and that all of these experiences have are really so that you can relate.
Yeah.
But to hear a guy that was so arrogant and so much, so much of an addict and all of those things, it seems a little unexpected to hear somebody humble themselves so much to be able to connect with God and see that peace.
Yeah. And I tell you, Shelly, that was part of the experience. I've been to some seriously dark places. Places that you read about in books and you see in movies and stuff that people don't bring up. We brush over those things on purpose, and I don't talk about them. And it's not because those areas of my life are not healed, but they don't bring the glory where it needs to be, where it needs to go. And so I'm more focused on what to do with that stuff than re-experiencing it or retelling that story. I'll brush over it to, kind of contribute to where I'm heading with the blessing, I guess you could say. But man, he has allowed me to experience some pretty wacky stuff in over 4 countries, and in a way that has inevitably reinforced the fact that I am not that big of a deal, and I cannot do it on my own. It's just not possible. And every single time in my life when I have fallen, he has been there to pick me up. And he has reassured me over and over again with evidence in my own life that I know about that's real, that, Brian, I got you. Relax. I made all this. I got it. I know how the machine works. I made it. Right. And so that really just, it gives me so much peace. I just surrender, man. I give up. I just give up. I can't do it. I don't know what I'm doing. Right. And so every day I'm just like, man, Lord, whatever comes across my desk today, like, can you just give me toss me a bone on what to do with it? And I do my best to rip every bit of meat I can get off that bone. That's really kind of my life.
Well, and it's interesting as I don't know, well, I could be talking out of turn. I don't know too many people that are deep in their addiction and in those patterns that are still, that really have this strong relationship with God. Was that true for you?
Yeah, I think when I was deep into addiction, I was all about me, and addiction by nature gets you real focused on what you need right now. Right. And it's all very, it's all very archaic, and it's just basic needs replaced with drugs. Right. So I'm hungry. No, you need a pipe. I'm thirsty. Nope, you need a line. Right. So that's kind of, it's simplified to that level, and you become so focused on those trivial things that you lose focus of anything outside of that. And so it was no different for me. I was all about me. I thought I was a big deal, man. I had everything in control, and I can manage this, and I just make a couple phone calls, I'll make it happen, and then I stopped using and realized how incredibly flawed I was and how little I had together, and so started rebuilding.
It's a powerful story. I'm curious about what role spirituality plays as you work with people in treatment. Do you see a lot of people grab onto that? Because I know it looks different for everybody, but what's your insight there?
Yeah, so here at Transformations, we have a Jewish track. Crazy. I had no idea until I got here that was a big deal. It's huge, and it's so amazing the differences in the culture, the Jewish culture and other cultures, and what they demand, and how mental health and addiction and all that plays into that. So we have a Jewish track to help folks like that, and it's wildly successful, and we're still developing that even further, and we're hoping to implement a Christian track here soon, and then also gender specific groups. And so all this stuff kind of plays into that spirituality and teasing apart, who am I and what is my purpose here, and what's my story for, what's this journey all about. And so for folks that I see, if they're not outspokenly about Christianity or religion or whatever, however you want to term it, I really open that door with a conversation about belief system, because I truly believe that no matter what you believe, the choices we make in life are based off our belief system. There's a reason why we don't go out and kill people. Well, I don't want to spend a lot of time in prison, and I don't know anybody right now that really makes me that angry, right? So I can't get there. I just can't get there. My whole point being that we do have a thought process, and it is based off of experiences, and it is based off of what we believe, whether that's God or otherwise. And so introducing that conversation of belief system, and your belief system now, this is what I'm hearing, and what does that mean long term, and what plays into that to sustain long term with the vision that you have for your life, and is it going to get it done with just the basic laws in life, or is there more needed? And for me, I needed more, and God was it.
That's awesome. I love to tease that piece out, just because you hear about it a lot, and a lot of programs. I don't know that I've ever really paid attention that there's a Jewish tract, and it's interesting that you start a Jewish tract before you start a Christian tract. At least as it seems like in U.S. history, Christianity is maybe bigger, but but I'm sure there's a reason.
Yeah. Well, we had a Christian track before, and COVID happened, and I'm new here at Transformations, but it's my understanding that played a role in it kind of dying off a little bit. Jewish track stayed strong for whatever reason. I don't know. The research is still out, I guess. I don't know the details of that, but for whatever reason, it stuck out through the coronavirus, the pandemic, and so we want to use that as a launching point to provide the Christian track for folks that are interested, in hopes that that's more of a individualized support. And we'll see where we've got a lot of folks, demanding it, requesting it. So really excited where that's going to go. It's kind of fun to be a part of developing all that programming.
That's and it sounds like a really diverse program, and what you're developing has got a lot of diversity. I suspect that you've played a role in a lot of, thinking of what will improve programs. What's in the future for you personally and business wise?
Yeah. So for me personally, I don't want to drink, and drugs just don't seem to make any sense anymore. So I'm not seeing that in the future. For me personally, I want to be. I'm being serious now. Sorry, you can cut that out.
That's what makes it interesting.
There it is. There's your edit. No, so really for me personally, I want to continue to be driven in my passion to leave a legacy. That really lights me up, man. I really want to be that guy that people talk about when I'm dead. And I don't care what they say, but it's more about the influence and how I made them feel. And that is really important to me. I don't think many people remember what you say to them, but they always seem to remember how you made them feel. I think Maya Angelou might've said that. And it's so true. And so I'm really big on connection. I want to connect with my kids. I want to connect with my wife. I want to connect with my family. And I want to make conversations I have on a daily basis important. I want to be intentional about being present. And so that's me personally. I'm always working on that on a daily basis. And no matter what, whatever my goals are individually in life, as long as I stay focused on those things, I have no doubt they'll come to pass. So really that's, for me personally, I stay in the moment and try to stay focused on that stuff. And I'll worry about the big goals as we work through life on a daily basis. That's kind of my plan. Seems to be working pretty well for me right now. So I'm going to stick with, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. So we'll stick with that. But as far as professionally, man, I just started with Transformations 3 weeks ago, and absolutely blown away by these folks. I'm not even saying that because I'm attached to them now. It is a different breed of people. They are amazing. They're all about helping folks. They're genuine about it. They're sincere about it. They're intentional. They're consistent when they do it. I mean, I've never worked with a team so consistently across the board as amazing as they are, from the top to the bottom. We've got an amazing leadership team that is about doing cutting edge stuff to help people. Nothing's out of the question. Bring it to the table. Let's talk it over. Is it doable? Is it possible? Is it effective? If it is, we need to look at it. And so we're constantly looking at how to evolve programs and curriculums in a way that's going to touch people's lives individually and across family systems. So I love the fact that they're not just people that talk about it, they're doers, and I get to be a part of that machine now to actually make it happen. And so professionally in my life right now, I'm on an extreme high. I'm super pumped to be here. And we just merged with Up Health, and so sky's the limit. I mean, there's tons of stuff in the future for expansion and just doing the best we can to take care of folks in South Florida and then nationally as well, from East Coast to West Coast. So I don't know where that's going to go, but my mind is blown thinking about it.
Well, that's a big transition. Yeah. You mentioned that was kind of one of your triggers in the past. What's your routine? What's your system of tools for, kind of maintaining?
Yeah. So if you look at it in detail, I really suck at it, and I'm doing horrible right now. I'm like a D on the grading scale right now. My self-care is out the window. I'm not eating well right now. I try to work out 3 times a week. And oddly enough, I was like, hey, I'm in transition. I should start working out again. Oh, that's going to work. Great plan, Brian. You should have learned this one already, you dummy.
Hey, you pile it on when it's the worst. That's a great way to crash.
When it rains, it pours, right? So I really, when I get into these moments, in these moments of transition, for me, I get into it's almost like I program myself to know that it's short term. Okay, so we know this is not going to last 6 months. We know that this is probably a 90-day. They have 90-day reviews for a reason, right? So I know this is probably going to be a 90-day transition-ish, and I just need to buckle in and enjoy the ride. Get enough sleep. Sleep is a big, in transition, that's something that I've noticed really has a big effect on me. If everything else falls apart and the sleep, that puts me in a really tough spot. So in times like this, I try to strap down, realize it's only for the short term, and make sure I'm getting 8 hours plus a night of sleep a night. That's really kind of my game plan right now. And being flexible, man. It's like I want to work out, but there's not always time to do it. And so I've got to be flexible in knowing, hey, you're not going to get an hour in today, but you could probably get 30 minutes. And guess what? It's not going to be with those traditional, dumbbells over there. You're on the 5th floor of this apartment complex. Why don't you run downstairs and let's do a couple flights and let's get something in, get your heart rate up, get the blood flowing. So I try to get creative in times like this and be flexible and understand that it's short term and make it work the best I can.
Do you have people that are part of that, your sober tools?
Oh my gosh, yes. And they hound me constantly. Yes, they're those people, right? It's like, man, I'm fine. Stop calling me. No, my parents are still a major support in my life. My dad, number one, him and I are just really close and we talk all the time. And so he was in the medical field for 40 years. And so is pretty well versed on addiction and mental health as well. And so he's a huge support. My father-in-law is a major support too. He was in Michigan in our transition there when I was going through a tough time and really helped get us through that storm. And so I see him as a huge support. And even the folks here at work, I mean, just so quickly we become this close family in just 3 weeks. It's crazy. It's the craziest thing. I mean, in over 20 years in the field, I can maybe think one other time I experienced this, and it was because I was in the Dominican Republic and there was nobody else around. Nobody spoke English. I'm like, okay, well, you're my family. All right. Oh, this works. I surrender. And now at Transformations, and even in 3 weeks, we become a close-knit group, even on the surface, so quickly. And they speak so openly and genuine and sincere about mental health and addiction and what it takes to be successful. And they're real about it. And so these are conversations I'm having in hallways and offices all day long. So it's hard at this point in my life. And I'm grateful to say this. It's hard to get away from support. It's everywhere. I've gotten to a place where I've understood recovery enough to where I'm able to attract it almost. And that's a blessing.
Well, and you're open to it, right? You're open to people connecting with you. And I'm sure that people who know you, like your dad and your father-in-law, they're like, Brian's in transition. We got to call him more because we know that's a hard thing for him.
And it's because when, throughout this whole process, I got to a place where I'm just super transparent. I'm a direct guy. This is me. I don't know. You either like me or you don't. There's 7 billion people. If you don't like me, you got plenty others to pick from, right? So I got to a point where I was just really direct and honest about stuff. So I revealed a lot to close supports at the time about these things that we're talking about. And thankfully, they've remembered them and they've carried them over into the future and where we're at now. And it's turned into being the support I need in times of transition. So no complaints.
That's very cool. I think Brene Brown says we've got to have at least one person, right? One person that we can be us with and that isn't trying to fix our problems, but shows up for us, right? So I love you have a whole network of people.
Yeah. She's a pretty smart woman, I hear. Wow.
Yeah. Are you a reader, Brian? You read a lot?
I would like to read more. So when you say read, I was thinking about this the other night. It's like, Brian, are you a reader? It's like, well, I don't really pick up a book, but nowadays you don't need to, right? So I'm always reading stuff online. I love research-based stuff. I'm always going on sites and reading research studies and things. And I'm real active on LinkedIn. So I'm always reading articles people post there that kind of grab me and pull me in. And so, yeah, I guess I'm a pretty avid reader.
So I'm curious, what's cutting edge? You talked about, your team being just so on board with anything that is effective and cutting edge. what would you say are some of the cutting edge approaches, coming online right now?
Yeah, so I think, population specific, one of the cool things about Transformations is we're one of only 4 accredited sites supported by the Fraternal Order of Police, which is the largest organization in the United States, from my understanding. And so knowing populations that need to be supported. So we have a VA first responders program that's accredited by the FOP, and that's pretty amazing. 1 of 4 means that we're 4 people doing it. So that's pretty cutting edge to me. Individually, what we do in that program as far as curriculum, that's a separate conversation. But in the midst of all that we do here at Transformations, we're the only facility in the United States with brain mapping incorporated on site in the facility with the levels of treatment that we cover. So brain mapping, brain spec scans, finding more internal evidence of what is going on with an individual, I think is cutting edge. That is about as cutting edge as you can get in our field. Insurance companies hate it right now, but it makes sense, and it's getting it done, and it's providing information that allows us to better guide individuals and families. And I love that. And so, I'm a big fan of Dr. Daniel Amen and Amen Clinics, and the stuff he's doing there. We're the only field within the medical field that literally throws darts at a board when diagnosing. We're the only ones that don't look internally to find evidence of what's going on. And so brain spec scans, brain mapping, these sorts of things give us some more information of what exactly on the functioning level, what is going on that's hindering behaviors, decision-making, impulsivity, whatever it is. What's causing this? And we can find patterns better by using these tools, and then use supplements and EMDR and a number of other modalities to better harness these behaviors so that they work for us rather than against us.
And are you guys pro? I've heard people, are you doing neural feedback, or are you doing transcranial type mapping?
Both.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like the software they use is, I'm still learning, the program here, but it's like they actually said, I was talking to them. I got brain mapped yesterday. We're going to see the results tomorrow, so pray for me.
Hopefully they find something in there.
Right. Brian, we're going to show yours at the end of the day. We think that's probably better.
Here's the example of what you don't want your brain to look like.
No, they show that one to you first, and they show mine, and it's no different. It's like, well, that looks very simple. What in the world is that? But I did brain mapping. They were explaining it to me, and it's, it was a lot of big stuff I don't talk about often, so it was a lot to absorb, and so I was learning, and they were telling me about the software being some of the most cutting edge software for that purpose that's on the market right now, which is pretty neat.
That's incredible. And then what about MAT stuff? Are you using medications, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so we have Freedom Now. We have a facility here for outpatient purposes, for medication-assisted treatment, medication management that we use with our folks that are in all levels of care. We have a pharmacy here on site in our facility, and so we manage that and try to educate the best we can on more effective medications, depending on whatever the diagnosis is. You have folks come in that may be on XYZ medication, and really ABC would be a better fit for you with the particular diagnosis. So we try to educate the best we can and make those adjustments while they're here in treatment, so we can see that transition, that happens between medications, and stabilize them during that time, and be a support so that when they leave, they're feeling nice and comfy on the new meds, and it makes sense, and the dosage is where it needs to be in that therapeutic range to get them optimal levels of what they need.
Very cool. The buzz that I've been hearing too is on psychedelics. You guys messing with psychedelics at all, or testing on that?
We don't currently. I believe probably that conversation will come in the near future. I think the shroom boom is upon us, and I think there's something to be said about research that's coming out related to trauma and addiction and chronic depression and things like that. I think that being in the field not to look at it would be unwise. And, our leadership team is absolutely open to what is it going to get done? What is it going to take to get it done for individuals and families? And if that's part of the picture, that'll be part of the conversation.
it's a little counterintuitive when the very thing that, we've been using for our addictions is the thing we're going to turn to help, create some healing there. And so I think that may be why it gets a little bit of a bad rap, but it does some really, really powerful studies that are coming out now. And so it's very interesting. I'm still gonna, the jury is out for me, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, and one thing I say right off the bat in conversations like this is that, a lot of folks say the same thing, like, oh, we use this in addiction and then went down the wrong road and led to everything we don't want. And why would we use it to heal? Well, first of all, the world's that crazy and it happens that way sometimes. So let's just say that generally. The other side of that is, when we use whatever we used in our moment of active addiction, we were using in excess. We were well outside the therapeutic range, right? So we're finding that with shrooms and ketamine and some of these other alternative medicines, that within therapeutic ranges, they actually are very effective at managing symptoms and doing it in a way that offers some residual effects after they leave the office and with no side effects. It's like, wow, that's something worth looking at in my mind. So, doing these things and it's done, medically managed and within therapeutic ranges, I think it can be effective at helping people live healthier lives.
I think so too. I've heard some pretty incredible stories of within one or two treatments, things shifted in the brain, right? It shifted and allowed them to get recovery that they had never been able to experience. So you can't ignore that.
Yeah.
So I love that you guys are looking at that.
Yeah, I saw research most recently from Johns Hopkins, I think it was, on psilocybin and how one session, I think it's an hour session, if I recall correctly, had residual effects up to 6 months out and no side effects, positive residual effects, and nothing but positive outcomes reported by research clients, patients they were researching on. So that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, it's just a matter of time before I think insurance companies will be forced to, pay for treatment that is obviously been tested and studied and that the evidence is showing that it's effective. And yeah, you're going to have to pay for it. But I know they're pushing back and they will, because that's the nature of the beast.
That's it. It's part of the process. They're allowed to do that. That means we're heading in the right direction.
Yep, totally. Brian, I'm just wondering if you have any final words of wisdom. Your story is incredible. I've just absolutely been thrilled listening and, on the edge of my seat going, oh, wow, man, my heart aches. But then I see you today and you're this incredible, vivacious man that's just full of life. And it's pretty cool to have you come and share your story and your recovery and the fact that you're still in it. You're still doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. And I'm nothing special. God's been really good to me, and I'm grateful. And gratitude has a way of rewiring the brain and preparing you for things that you never knew you could handle. And so one thing I learned, I forget the quote, and I wish I could remember it because I would sound so much smarter right now, but I don't remember it. But it was something to the effect of when you're in that dark moment and you feel like you've been buried, or you feel like you've been buried. Sometimes it's because you've been planted. You're underground and it's dark and it feels hopeless, but you're actually been planted and there's something that's going to sprout from this. And so that's it's something that I remember often in low times and dark times and times of hopelessness and just not feeling like I can go on another day, because I'm human. I feel those times too. And I just try to look back on all the things that is, God's used me for. And why not tomorrow? Maybe, a lot can happen in 24 hours, right? Mm-hmm. So I keep those things in mind, and I encourage whoever's listening to do the same. A lot can happen in 24 hours. And if it's a dark time right now, it could very well be because you're being planted. And so sit back and watch it sprout.
Holding that space in a dark time is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have, right? Because everything in us wants us to squirm and get out of it. But sitting in those spaces, I love what you said, right? Is you're getting ready to sprout and something good's going to come from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Brian, if people want to get a hold of you, and reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, probably LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I love it. I just think it's a great way to support and connect with other people. It's been huge in my recovery journey. Been able to connect with people all over the world and just amazing minds, amazing souls. And so I'm on there a lot. If you guys want to, stay in contact with me, you can do that through hashtag Be Real with Brian on LinkedIn. I do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday posting. Today's Wednesday. I got to do a post today. All right. So, I got to think that through. So I do a posting on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday is Mental Health Monday. Wednesday is Wellness Wednesday. And then Friday's Phoenix Friday for addiction. And just trying to offer some information, some knowledge, some things I've picked up along the way in hopes that it's helpful for folks dealing with things related to mental health, general wellness, and addiction.
Very cool. Yeah. So definitely, I know I've read a couple of your posts, and I love them. They're very inspirational, and keep you thinking in the right path. So I appreciate that you contribute that. Brian Wall, thanks for being on the show today. It's been incredible.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Shelley.
Thanks for being here.
You bet.
I didn't get too much chance to time in. You didn't
I know.
Need me.
I was like, is he like doing is he the producer, or is this guy part of the show? Like what? I don't.
Yeah. Well, Shelley's a therapist, so she already knows everything, so she can cue into what you're talking about a lot easier. I'm the business guy, so I'm kind of dumber, and my questions come a little bit slower.
Well, you got the producer
and when it gets
headset.
slow, I jump in. That's when I jump in, and you guys didn't need me.
And you got the producer headset on, so I was like, man, this guy's a producer.
I had no value to add. That's what it come down to. There was no value.
Oh,
so
man.
I know when I'm helpful. Today was not it.
I try and stop asking questions so you can pop in, but I get so curious I can't help myself.
No, that was fun.
That sounds like a fun facility to be a part of. Mm-hmm. We're out of Utah, so obviously, a ton of religious based treatment around here, and then obviously, the higher power thing is a basis for a lot of programs, but definitely, I don't want to say dogma is too strong of a word, but I think when relying on a higher power, if somebody already has this kind of really rigid, religious structure that they're coming from, mm-hmm. There's kind of this like amends mentally where they've got to get right with all of that, right? And for some people, it's getting right means understanding that it's just not for them and walking away with a clean break. And with others, it's okay. I'm making amends. I got my higher power and I know who it is, but I sure didn't walk the path I was supposed to. So how do I fit my life story back into, however this atonement is supposed to work type thing. So we're certainly familiar with that. And it's interesting to see you kind of have to jump both sides of the fence there with two different, sets of ideology. So it's interesting.
Man, it's like, I tried to piece it together for the longest time and it's been so screwed up. I just came to the conclusion it's not able to be pieced back together. I just got to go with the pieces. Right. So I was hoping for, more of a picture puzzle in my life, but it's come out to be more of like a stained glass abstract. Like, all right, well, let the light shine, I guess, as long as I'm in a lit room, it looks pretty cool.
No, you got a good story. You got good energy. Thanks, that's the sparkle is there, right? That's kind of the part that matters. I think part of the challenge with, somebody like you, where you've got a lot of energy and you've got that sparkle, is it's easy to be that for other people. I don't know if you always see that in yourself. And so sometimes it feels like, when you slow down, then it's okay. Who's the sparkle for me type thing. Yeah. You see that with comedians a lot.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
the struggle with mental illness and some of those struggles,
I tell you, man, that's, you're dead on with that. And it's a real struggle for some folks. And it used to be for me, because when I wasn't the life of the party, jacked up in a bar somewhere, that's exactly where I went. I went to those dark places, and I am honestly super grateful for my wife. She's been through her own trauma, her own addiction, life, journey. And she gets it. She just gets it, and she gets me really well. And she's really great at, she senses energy levels in rooms really well. And so if I walk in and I can say, "Hey, honey," and I can say, "Hey, honey," you didn't see any difference there. She notices, right? So she's right off the bat, like, "Are you okay, honey? Like, what do you need tonight? I want to make tonight about you. Like, what do you need? Do you want to go work out? Why don't you go for a run?" You know, like, she knows I'd like to get out, like, clears my head and stuff. And so she's a big part of just holding me together and keeping me grounded and reminding me what I
she,
need.
like you said, she's got a story too. So you probably catch those cues from her.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that happens in life is I think you go from the scene, right? When you're younger, it's kind of a different scene versus, I think being an executive, being in leadership, or even just a therapist, I think can be the same way, right?
Yeah,
you kind of carry a burden all day, and there's some days when there's successes and you leave and you're like, okay, this feels really good. And there's some days when you leave and you're like, all right, I need to turn off.
I think I made it worse.
I just need a healthy way to turn off.
Yeah,
today,
exactly.
And that's not always possible, especially with those little kids. So
totally
kudos to you and your wife for finding that balance and figuring it out.
Thanks, man. Yeah, those are the nights that I go, "Babe, bedtime, 8:30."
Right?
Early bedtime tonight.
Yeah.
I don't care if they were glowing. They get their treat tomorrow. Bedtime.
Yeah.
You got to shut it down.
Those are the nights I take the lead as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. It's cool to connect, and don't be strangers.